So I've introduced you to the renderer before, but I want to talk a little bit more about it. Rendering is a huge topic. This series is going to keep it pretty simple, but just realize that there's a lot there you can explore on your own. So rendering is how we take our Cinema 4D file and make it into something that we can view in another format, whether that's animation or a still print. Animation has some different requirements for rendering. So this series is really going to deal with still images. So to get our render settings, we go here, and this should look familiar to you probably already, but there's some options here. First of all, I want to point out that there are several different options here, right? This series is going to deal with the standard renderer. There's something called a physical renderer, which has to do more with effects. The viewport renderer is exactly what it sounds like. It will render the viewpoint of what you see in your viewport, which can be different when we get into using cameras. ProRender I'm not really familiar with. I should probably check that out, but I'm not going to do it quite yet. There are other renderers that you may hear about or see. A very common one is Arnold. There's Redshift. There's a number of them, and they usually range about $300 to $500, which is why we're not using them. All right, so I want to just start with going back up here to the output. So you'll notice that everything's in pixels here. If we wanted to be printing these on a 3D printer, we might want to change it to centimeters, but we're going to leave this at pixels. You could also change them if you're dealing with a print. You could change it to inches if that's easier for you to understand. For example, I know some of you are going to be in the BFA show at some point, and you may want to print out something to have in that show. So that would be an instance where you might want to think about pixels. These things you can probably just leave as they are. That's absolutely fine. The resolution is set to 72, and when we get into animation, you can't change this for animation, but for prints we could. Let's say I wanted a very high quality print. I think our printer prints at like 366, right? I could set that resolution higher. Now that will make my render time a little longer. Just be aware of that. So if you're in a big hurry, you want to do a test print, take it back down to 72. There's also something here called a render region. So there's a button here that says copy from IRR, and that means the interactive render region, which you can get to up here. So this is for seeing a rendered version of something while you're actually working on it, but you can also come in and say, hey, just make my render region from that. You can also just put in a border here by pixels, and that's fine. This down here, this for now, you're just going to keep it on current frame because we don't have more than one frame. All right, our save, of course, we want to tell the renderer where to save our file. I'm just going to make a folder here and call it exports. And I'm going to give it a better name than untitled. Okay. You could change the format. Again, there's a whole lot of formats here. Some of these, I don't know what they are. I don't know what that one is. I don't know what a couple of these are down here. But notice you can even do a Photoshop file, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But I'm going to keep this at JPEG for now. Again, if you are printing this and you wanted a really high quality print, don't choose JPEG. In fact, let's just go back. I'm just going to say, you know what? I'm going to make this 366. I'm going to, because I want to, let's say I want to print it for my exhibition. So we got this. I'm going to change this to inches. Okay, so that's tiny. I'm going to say, let's lock the ratio. Let me go back. Here we go. Lock the ratio. Change this. There we go. Now it's 12 by 6. That's still pretty tiny. Let me take it up more. All right. Let's see how long this takes to render. All right, so I've got all this set. You can leave this the same. I'm going to save. I'm going to see where it needs to go. I'm going to keep this on the TIFF setting because a JPEG is not ever, ever, ever going to give you a good quality print. All right, image color profile. This is set to sRGB, and generally this is what you're going to want. All right, just a couple things looking ahead. We could target another program to export this into, like After Effects. Nuke is similar to After Effects, but a whole lot more expensive. Final Cut, wow, that's still around, and I don't really know what Motion is, so that's just kind of looking forward. We're just not going to use it right now, so I'm just going to unclick that. And then when I'm done with my settings, I'm just going to come up here and I'm going to have it render to the picture window or the viewport, and you can see what's happening here, right? So it's taking a lot longer to render because I did set that the size setting much bigger, so it took much longer to render than it did when I was keeping it smaller. I didn't show you that, so you're just gonna have to take my word for it. All right, let's see. All right, I'm gonna show you, let's see, how long is this video? You know what, I'm gonna cut this video here, and in the next video I'm gonna talk a little bit more about something called clay rendering and ambient occlusion.